As pivotal of a moment that was, it's still hard to admit when I fail, and it's still hard to accept that I feel like I'm continuing to let them down every time I fall to temptation, and I thought that would get easier, but it's not. It's still hard, and I have to keep myself accountable for continuing that conversation and not having it be a one-time conversation that hopefully just frees me from everything, but a continuation of multiple down the road. And that is, I had to get over a lot of pride and embarrassment to do that, and didn't realize that they weren't expecting me to be perfect after that moment. And I think I kept placing my own expectations on them for what they think of me, which is not the case. And so that is a continuing conversation I had to keep going with and be very diligent with as well. Both of my parents were late Christians in life. My dad was 45. My mom was probably 30. And so they've lived a lot of life before that. And although I knew their stories, both of them, and the things that, past lives and marriages and everything like that, I seemed to just forget that as a child and still growing up, and just focus on the incredible people they are now. And I think because of that, when you do that, it takes away humanness from people, because it's your parents and I look up to them and et cetera, et cetera. So that is all I focused on, and I forgot about the human aspect of a sinful life and struggles and failures that they've had in their past. So when I talked to my dad, even though these are stories I knew and I'm fully aware of, I needed to be reminded when I actually talked to him, where he looked me right in the eyes. This is something I've struggled with too. We're men, we're human. These are things that everyone struggles with, and no one is perfect. And that's so, in my mind, I was like, well, no, duh, I've always heard no one's perfect. The world is full of sin and everything like that. But for that to really sink in and be a reality, when the enemy's just whispering lies in your mind that you're a failure, you're doing this, you're the only one, et cetera, you start to forget that reality for other people, because you don't really see that side of other people all the time, but you know everything about yourself. And so it was hard to believe that, but I think that conversation with him reminded me one more time, like, my parents are human, and they're real, and they're loving, and they're forgiving, and if they're mimicking Christ, those are all the aspects that they should be having, and they did. And so I really appreciate that a lot. Forgiving myself is the one thing. I would feel actually disgusted with myself, and it was horrific. I get angry as well, and that would affect every other aspect of my life, because I was angry with what I was struggling with, and it kind of dug my hole deeper almost when I was not forgiving myself or not being able to get over it. It was frustrating, it was tiring, it was draining. As I got older, I started to realize that guilt isn't necessarily a bad thing, but shame is. And so that's what I was really looking back into that whole situation. I think shame was the big driving force of what kept me had like my back against the wall, with the devil just kind of attacking me, because I always had a really hard time distinguishing the difference between the two. I thought they kind of went synonymously hand in hand, between shame and guilt. And I would have this desire, because I felt like I wanted to stop. Like, I knew this wasn't good. I didn't want to keep doing this or struggling with this. But the shame was like, I don't know, it made you feel less human. It made me feel dirty. And then it made me feel really hesitant to ask for forgiveness, because I did not feel worthy when I had that. I felt like I was abusing grace, is what I felt like. I felt like I had used up my forgivenesses already, I think. And that was a little lie that was continuing to be whispered in my ear, and I think that's where the shame started to come. So I feel like in order to be forgiven, I would have to fix myself first, which would be stopping pornography. And so every time I would fall back into that, the shame comes right back on it. And again, I'm not ready to go to God, because I'm not clean. I'm not ready for that. And so I think shame really built that barrier between forgiveness for me personally. And so once I learned the difference of that, or I was taught and showed that difference, I think that helped me understand grace a lot more, and understand that some of the guilt is good because I know what's right. I have a conviction in my Holy Spirit, and that's what I should be focusing on and hang on to, because it's not something I want to continue struggling with. It's something I want to move past. And so that, once I could try and get shame out of the way, I think that helped me get down the road of forgiveness of myself, but also understanding my forgiveness in God's eyes, and truly what his love means for me. I know I'm not completely broken free from it completely, but I think when that's not in my life, it shows. Because when it was in my life, I was, felt dirty or whatever, and I felt unworthy of talking to girls and everything like that because of something I've been struggling with. And so when I have kind of finally got out of that ditch, I couldn't stop talking about it, I think. And because of that, I was able to have a lot more conversations with people, and help them and have accountability with them. And that would also give me accountability. And it kind of started this like steamroller of passion for like, okay, I can do this through Jesus. Philippians 4:13 was like my favorite verse. It was like, all things are possible through he who gives me strength. And that gave me a new meaning. And because I was really doubting that. Because I was like, am I ever going to break free from that? And it's kind of shown me that is totally possible. And I think that was a lie. Again, I was like, well, I'm never going to break free completely. Like, I'll always be stuck in this and whatever. But once I kind of got my mojo and got the Holy Spirit firing up in me and started talking to people and accountability, I was ecstatic, because it was like the one thing that I kept feeling like that when I was at my most unhealthy, that is what would thrive. I think it's just made me more open with people in every aspect, not just pornography. If I'm struggling with anything now, it has given me like the courage to talk to people, not just about pornography, but every other aspect of my life. I think that's the best part about being free from it. Once I realized I'm not strong enough in the moment, I had to learn how to avoid getting to that moment. And so the little things that I overlooked that would lead eventually to fall in pornography, or would lead to a physical relationship with a girl, I had to really focus and remember that it all starts with that first step and not the final decision. And so that had to be a rewiring of like, I need to think about those things and be cautious and never get to that level, because I know I'm not strong enough and I know I'm probably going to fail in that moment. So being much more vigilant and aware of those all around me kind of opened my eyes to just where it was. And because of that, I think I've been able to have deeper friendships and relationships with people, especially girls. I think that's been really awesome by being upfront and real and raw. And just, I feel like it helped me with every female in my life, my mom, my sisters, everything like that, just to be able to talk to them with that. But yeah, it's definitely been a rewiring of the baby steps, because those lead to the downfall. But I also think it's interesting how elevated the struggle with sexual anything is over most other struggles. And because of that, sometimes it would blind other things that I'm struggling with, because this has become an elevated, like, well, this and drugs are like here. And then everything else is like, well, I mean, it's not this, at least. So I think that also clouded my healing in everything, because it was so elevated by society and culture, and the Christian church and everything like that. But with that pornography, when I saw the science come out about that, about how men are having trouble getting turned on now with their with future relationships because of porn, how it disturbs and destructs the beautiful, intimate creation that God has between man and woman, that kind of scared me, because I was really scared that I wouldn't be sexually attracted to my wife, or sexually in the future, or whatever that may look like. It did scare me. I was like really concerned about that, because you can see this progression of perversion in what has started to like stimulate you. I think pornography changes your emphasis, your focus on what you want in a relationship heavily. When physical attraction and the thought of sexual intercourse is a driving factor, it just heavily blinds a lot of other relational things that you should be striving for, that are a true, wonderful, flourishing relationship, for something that is so significantly small in the greater picture of a relationship. And so when that becomes a driving force, you miss everything else and forget that sex maybe doesn't last forever, or that's not going to keep a marriage together one day. That's not going to help raise a family. That's not going to produce a family. But I think the emphasis of that, your brain can only go to that. And because of that, you miss out on everything else, what a relationship is supposed to look like, and the beautiful, supportive, encouraging, growing relationship that I do want can get clouded by the thought of just sexual attraction. And with pornography, sexual acts become elevated with what you're looking for in a relationship, and can overshadow everything else that relationship is supposed to be, or the beautiful things and incredible life-giving things of that relationship. And they can also cloud your judgment of maybe the nasty traits in that relationship that aren't going to last long, but you're elevating sexual desires so much that you overlook major red flags, or things that are destructive to you as a person, your personality, your dreams, your relationship with God. It seems to substitute and gain weight in a place that it shouldn't. After porn and the struggle with that, and how that leaked into a relationship, and the whole situation with my parents, it scared me so much about going into a relationship with a struggle to porn, that I said I made a promise to myself that I will not get into another relationship until I've gotten at least a year free of porn, because I did not want that to ever happen again. And I didn't want that to be a straining factor in a relationship with a girl. And so that also gave me accountability to say, like, hey, I want to meet a girl one day, but I need to make sure I take care of this problem, because I may think it's insignificant now, but I've seen the repercussions of that creeping into a real relationship. And so I made a promise with myself for that to happen. And then I also wrote a note to my future wife. It's something that a mentor encouraged me to do. And I wrote a note saying, essentially apologizing to my future wife for the things I've struggled with, and the times I've fallen to temptation, and how I cannot change that, which as much as I wish I could, I can't. But I am in control of the future and how I act accordingly from here on. And so I made a promise to her. I said, from here on out, I'm thinking of you in mind. I'm not going to be selfish and just think about my desires and what I want right now. I want to think about my future wife, truly, because I want to serve you. I want to be in a relationship with you that is God-centered and is thriving, and I do not want these things to be in my life. And so I made that promise in a note to her, and then I sealed it and hung it up by my bed that just is addressed to dear future wife. And I hope that I can give that to her on our wedding night as a sign of, I've been thinking of you for a while, and I want you to have this, and I want you to have me exactly where I am with that. And I think that added, again, another layer of accountability for myself, because I would think in moments, I don't want to taint that letter. I want to give that letter to her one day. The reason I chose to wait a year of porn-free before I got into a relationship is because there was multiple times in my journey where I had gone up to 6 months without looking at porn and think, beat it, nailed it, it's not part of my life anymore. And then out of nowhere, I get hit with just the devil just slapped me in the face and bringing me back. And so that was very discouraging, especially because I thought, hey, 6 months is pretty long to do that. So I said, I'm going to double that. I'm going to wait till I've doubled 6 months before I enter into a relationship again. And so during that year, it ended up being 3-year gap before I got into another relationship. 4-year gap, sorry. So it ended up being 4 years after that last relationship before I decided to get into another one. Some of the habits that I formed during those 4 years in hopes of having a healthier relationship down the line were, again, watching out for those baby steps and not playing with girls' emotions. Things that maybe I thought were innocent were casual flirting or a little bit of this or a little bit of that I had no intentions of going any further. I just kind of stepped back away from everything because I thought, I don't want to hurt you and I don't want to hurt myself. So I ended up being very upfront with people about my expectations and my intentions, and having that verbal communication upfront about that helped me move forward with friendships and potential relationships down the road. And it just made me think more long-term about my actions instead of right now. I had expectations for what a relationship would look like and certain things about that relationship that held me, again, accountable by not just doing little meaningless flings or whatever that may be, because I had an idea of what I wanted one day with a girl. During this time, I wasn't willing to give to anything less than a Christ-centered relationship and a healthy relationship like that. And because of that, I just stopped kind of messing around with little things that I thought may be meaningless to me, which they very well might have been, or even innocent to me. But it really made me think about the other people and the people I'm interacting with and the people that I'm giving my attention to and their feelings and their journey. And it just made me take the attention on myself, which has been the last 12 years, the center of my universe, to really thinking about other people and how my actions affect them. And I think that was the hardest part to get over, was how I affected people around me with losing trust or treating poorly, or whatever that may be. It was all based on these selfish desires. So once I started projecting my expectations and intentions onto other people and saying, look, this is real, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm about, this is what I'm thinking about, etc. Once I started taking the spotlight off myself and putting it on other people as well, it helped me connect with them better. It helped me be more careful with my decisions and who I give my attention to and what repercussions that may have. For the last 3 years, I've been working with college ministry with Young Life, which is a program and a ministry that has impacted my life greatly, and is something that's been placed on my heart to walk alongside people through journeys that are similar in age with me. And so during that, we've had a lot of questions brought up about pornography, about sex out of marriage, things like that, that I don't always know the answers for, but I'm willing to find them with them. But I've had questions specifically about how did you break your addiction to porn? And they want to know that. I always say, it's because I had accountability and I did this, but people want to know, like, step by step, every little gritty detail about how I went about doing that. So I would tell them I used Covenant Eyes, which is an accountability program first, which was incredible. That started the process. But then I would explain to them the things that maybe are counterintuitive at the moment, like getting into the Word, getting connected with your church, getting connected with a mentor, things like that may not have at the time a direct impact on your problem with your addiction to pornography, but that are actually feeding into your change of heart that is going to free you from pornography. This is not just breaking a habit. This is a change of desires, a change of heart, a desire to look at Christ, not just a not fall to temptation to pornography. And then I get questions about, what about just like oral sex outside of marriage? What about not just sex? Like, where in the Bible does it say, like, you can't get a blowjob? And I can't tell you that in the Bible it says you can't get a blowjob specifically. But I think that is where I start to talk about, the steps up to the final decision. Okay, so if you do this, eventually you're going to start to say or justify, we can take that one step further, though. And you get comfortable with that. And then that becomes a norm, and then you take one step further. And then all of a sudden you're faced now again with a decision between, do we have sex or not? And you're going to say right now that is, you'll say no in the moment. But in the moment, very clouded judgment. Hormones are kind of taking over everything. So we have to really talk about the lines and boundaries, sexual-wise, that would be healthy to have with a girl, and why those are being initiated. Again, it can't just be rules. It has to have this meaning behind it and purpose behind it. Well, why do you even want to have those expectations? And so we have to really talk about the heart behind that a lot. And then a lot of guys also want to know about forgiveness, about pasts, whether they've been with a lot of women or struggled with pornography or whatever that may be, but they want to know how to move forward with that by talking to their parents, or how to bring that up with their parents, especially if they're not Christian. And because some of the guys that I've talked with, their parents don't see that as a problem. So but they want to talk to their parents about that. They want to have they have a good relationship with them. So how do we talk about subjects that matter to me and my relationship with God, but maybe don't necessarily matter to my parents? And how to also where to find a mentor that can talk to you about that and really discuss that and go through those motions with you. So that's a hard one for guys to figure out, because they have this desire, this hunger to break free from these chains, but they have no idea who to turn to do it. And so that's been one that we've talked about a lot as well. I think a big lesson for myself to learn, again, back to the baby steps of, okay, I'm not going to go to pornographic sites, but I still have a bunch of models I follow on Instagram, or I still watch R-rated movies or TV shows with nudity in it. These are things that I overlook as, well, that's not my focus, so therefore, I'm not watching it specifically for nudity, so I can just get over that and look past it. But again, it goes all the way back to those baby steps, little seeds again planted in your mind. So when I'm watching something and maybe a nudity scene comes up, I don't think that affected me at the moment, and maybe it didn't. But again, it's planted something else in my mind that later that night, when I'm by myself, lying in my bed, that suddenly pops up into my mind. And then I start thinking about that, and that grows. And then all of a sudden, I'm faced with the decision again, should I click on that or not? And so again, these baby steps, or not babies, these little things that seem so insignificant at the moment, I forget how powerful they latch on to my sexual desires that can lead, again, to a decision I don't want to make. And so I really, again, had to be very conscious about, what am I looking at? What are my feet? The eyes, the gateway to heaven, or what's that?
Shoot, I know. Gateway to the soul.
Gateway to the soul. Yeah, right. So the eyes are extremely powerful, and with that comes accountability that you need to have and control you need to have. And so if you eliminate all these trickle effects, little parts that lead up to porn, well, you're not ever going to get to that if you're eliminating the steps preceding it. And so those are things I really had to come to terms with, that they're not good for me. Even though they seem insignificant, they're going to lead to something more. And so I had to be vigilant about what's on my Instagram feed, what TV shows I'm watching, and what movies I may be watching as well. I used to make fun. My mom used to, whenever we'd watch movies, when a nudity scene would come on, my mom would jump up from the couch and big hands over, the screen and everything like that. And I thought, when you're a kid, that makes sense. I get that. But in my mind, I was I'm an adult now. I can see a little bit of nudity or a sex scene and be totally fine. That's not going to affect me. But again, completely underestimating the power that can latch on and brew to lead to something I don't want to do. How do I navigate that? Because I do want to be relevant with people on TV shows. I do want to be able to have conversations about that, or just enjoy a TV show maybe that I'm interested in. And so I'm still trying to figure out holding myself accountable for, I know those aren't good things, and I try and find little loopholes around it. But sometimes I need to restructure myself or refocus myself on what's more important. Being relevant on Game of Thrones, or porn-free, having thriving relationships, being able to connect with girls and have good conversation, and et cetera, et cetera. I have to start evaluating what's more important. When I'm being tempted, the things that are tempting me become so elevated that I get tunnel vision and forget about everything else around me. So in this case, if it's something that I want to watch like Game of Thrones, I forget about all the other TV shows. I forget about all the other movies, games, everything like that, and I get fixated on the one thing I can't have or shouldn't have. And so I'm still trying to learn how to balance that and how to get around that and how to also be open with my friends, saying that, look, I'm weak in this area, and I know this is actually going to affect me in a way, and to not be embarrassed by saying that to some of my close friends, and maybe help me as well with that, which is be cool. Because if I could really talk to my friends and maybe even encourage them, we all may be able to go do something else. And so then it's not just me doing it, because it's scary to be the only one to kind of stand up for that or to decide not to do something that may seem so petty to everyone else around us. So that's a hard one to do, and that takes a lot of bravery. Masturbation actually came into my life before pornography. I probably was about 6 years old when I started masturbating. And it was the same thing about pornography until I was 11. I thought I was the only person in the world that knew about this secret that I had. Because I'd never been, I was so young, but I'd never been told about it. And usually it wasn't sexual desire driven. It was just like a feeling that I found out is awesome. And so I think that was actually a secret I had for a long time, even before porn, that I bury away sometimes. I just kind of forget about that. So then when pornography came along, masturbation with it, and then when pornography stopped, masturbation continued. I thought that they were connected in a way that if I stopped watching porn, I would stop masturbating. That they were hand in hand, and that if I got rid of one, I'd get rid of the other. And I forget how powerful our minds are, and how even the thought of idolatry, of sexual desires and stuff like that, that's the same in God's eyes as watching something. When you're lusting over someone in your mind, it's the same as watching it or even doing it in God's eyes with that sin. And so if I didn't change the way that I thought, because for some reason I thought that my mind was private, but if I watched it, it was different. But if I didn't change the way I was thinking, I was still masturbating and ultimately doing the same thing as watching porn. Except instead of watching porn on a laptop, I was watching it in my mind. Because I have had 11 years of pornography. Not all of that just races in your mind. And so that was a hard one because I could still masturbate all the time, even without porn. But that's a whole different beast on how to tackle. Because I don't know. I haven't been able to completely get that out at all. That's been a struggle with me my whole life now, and it's still something I'm trying to navigate and figure out, because it doesn't seem possible a lot in my mind. It seems like, well, it's natural, it's healthy, and that's what we're also being told all around us, is that it's a natural part of life and that it's good to do, actually. So when that's being encouraged on you by the secular world all around you, easy to give into that one. And think, oh, this is healthy. This is good. At least I'm not looking at porn. At least I'm not hooking up with girls each night. This is like a safe ground. I can at least do this. So that has definitely been something I'm trying to figure out how to completely stop or to give up. And I think I'm on the right path as far as the way that I tackle pornography, to continue a change in heart and a transformation in my life and my desires, because my motivation to stop doing that is not just, again, because it's in the Bible, like you shouldn't do that, but because I want to stop doing that, because I know that is separating me from Christ, and it's hard. It's really hard, and I'm not sure. I haven't been able to beat that, and I don't know. I really am. That one's hard. Yeah, it's really hard for me, because I still don't know how to do it, and I think I easily sweep that under the rug as inferior to the problems I have in life. Because, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a hard one. That's a really hard one. I think when I was heavily into pornography, the desire was for just instant gratification, and was usually rooted in loneliness. And in my mind, fear of what if I never get to experience that? Like, what if I die tomorrow or something bizarre like that? And And I just held that as such an idol in my life, an elevated idol. Like, I cannot die without doing this, or I cannot. This is something that it was my mind was lasered in on, like, always thinking about that. And even though I'd never feel good afterwards, I would feel like, well, again, it's natural to have sexual desire. God gave us sexual desire, but it was hard for me to understand how you can control sexual desire before marriage, because what happens if you don't get married till you're 45? Are you supposed to go 45 years, especially in the current culture where porn is so accessible, and women and Tinder and all hookups and everything like that? You're supposed to go 45 years, and with no even guarantee of getting married one day. Like, I couldn't comprehend that, because my sexual desire wasn't healthy. It was all consuming. And so because of that, I would trick myself into saying, do this now, or you may never get to do it, or something along those lines. So when I had finally exited pornography, this addiction to pornography, sexual desires definitely did not leave by any means. And at times I felt like I was being attacked by the enemy, where they were heightened. Now that I'm going a long time without pornography, or I feel like it's building inside of me, this sexual desire. Once I got rid of that shame barrier between asking forgiveness with God and being real and talking with God, when I started praying for things, again, with masturbation specifically, I feel like up until this point and currently, it's still overshadowed by problems I elevate or think are more important to God than masturbation. And so I don't think I have been praying specifically as I should be for specific things like that. I think when I've been praying to God, I lump masturbation sometimes into like problems or struggles, but forget the power of specifically praying to God for things that Stuart is struggling with, and laying those all out. Because when I lump them together with praying to God, I also lump that together with living life and forget about that. So it's easily, again, casted into the shadows of bigger problems to tackle than masturbation. So I think that moving forward, I have really been trying to recently have specific prayers with Jesus. Not only, I know that God knows everything that I'm struggling with, but for me to say that and to be very specific with the problems I have, not only remind me, but also help me see areas of life where he's answering, because he may not be answering to the giant general prayer that I have, but maybe I can see him answering little things around that I'm overlooking, I'm completely missing. And so when you don't see him maybe just answer your main prayer, you get discouraged or think he didn't answer it, and don't realize how he's shaping and forming areas in my life that I've truly been praying for. And so I think that the focus of my prayer life it needs to be more focused. It needs more specific, and really zero in on the things that I'm struggling with personally. And so I think masturbation is definitely one of those. For us, maybe watching porn is less bad than hooking up with someone. But from God's view, I mean, neck and neck, that's the same thing. Because it's not about the action, it's about where your heart is and your mind is, and how that's diverting from Jesus. So the same thing with porn. During my time with porn, for most of it, I'd never even kissed a girl till I was 19 years old. Because in my mind, at least I wasn't acting on those desires. It was just porn. Because that was worse in my mind, to do these things. Because I thought that if I'm just watching it, you know, I'm not physically doing it, so it's like not as bad and whatever that is. But as I kind of moved forward as well, I really started to think, why does God view sin as sin? And why does he view these things on the same level? Because it's not about the physical actions of what we're doing. Again, it's about where our heart is and where our mind is. And how destructive that is, whether you're doing it or not. And specifically with porn, where I thought it wasn't hurting anyone, but truly I'm supporting an industry that is abusive of women, that is trapping women, that is something that I would any given day say I do not support and do not stand for, yet I am on my computer at night encouraging that, being a part of that, and not even thinking about the person on the other side of the screen. Because as far as I can tell right now, it's not hurting anyone. When in truth, it's not just hurting me, it's hurting a lot of people on that industry. And it's something that I completely overlook and take for granted. And saddens me, because it's something, again, I would stand up for any given day to say that I'm against and want to liberate and free and all these things, yet I'm being so hypocritical and cowardly kind of in my mind just by watching and staying silent with that. So some practical steps that I've been having and trying to implement in my life, and again, a progression of still making this a real part of my life. When you're in the moments, and I've unfortunately taken those steps to be in the moment, I'm trying to train myself, what are my last defenses of when I'm about to click on something, on a website or whatever it is, and what is my last defense for something that I'm trying to train myself to do. So for me personally, when I am so close to giving in, I call a friend. And I FaceTime a friend. And I don't even say that I'm about to look at pornography. I just call a friend. I say that because I know that after just calling and talking to someone and getting out of that headspace, I'll be okay. That's going to be okay. And so I'm training myself to, right when I'm about to do something, call someone. And I have people in my life that I can call. And I have now people in my life that expect me to call whenever I'm about to do something. And that's an accountability that I didn't want to do because I felt like I was placing my burden on other people because this is my problem that I'm about to click on something. But I would want any of my friends to call me, even if it was at 3 a.m., to say, hey, just talk for a bit. And I would be down for that. I would love to do that. I would love, because I want to see them grow. So I had to make sure I convinced myself and told myself, if I want them to do that for me, I also have to do that. I can do that for them. Like they want to see me grow. They want to see me thrive. Like this is not placing a burden on them. They want to share this burden in order to free both of us. So I train myself now, or continually trying to train myself to, if I ever reach that moment, call a friend. Don't text them, don't call a friend so you can talk to them. And that has helped me out immensely right now, at least.